I was sitting in a cafe when the barista handed me my drink, but instead of my name written on the cup, there were 4 words. Don't drink this. Leave it. My heart skipped. I asked her why, but she looked at me with fear in her eyes and whispered, now. A second later, the man sitting right next to me collapsed, and I realized this was no ordinary warning. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more stories like this, and comment below where you're watching from. My name is Lena Hart. I'm 26 years old, a graduate student, and I spend most of my mornings buried in books or trying to catch up on writing assignments. That morning it was raining, the kind of steady rain that makes you want to sit inside with a hot cup of coffee. I stopped at my favorite cafe before class, planning to get some work done on my laptop while sipping my usual order. The cafe was warm and familiar. The sound of milk steaming, the soft chatter of a few regulars, and the smell of fresh coffee beans always put me at ease. I recognized the barista right away. Her name was Maya. She was around my age, friendly, and she always remembered my order. We'd exchanged small talk many times, and she had the kind of smile that made people feel welcome. I settled at a small table by the window, right beside an older man reading a newspaper. He barely looked up when I sat down. I pulled out my phone and answered a text from my mom. She had checked in earlier that morning, reminding me, as she always did, to take care of myself. My older brother Daniel, a police officer, had also called the night before. He teased me about how trusting I was, telling me, you'd never notice if someone slipped something into your drink. At the time, I laughed, but his words would take on a frightening meaning that day. When Maya called my name, I got up, expecting to see my usual cup waiting. But when she handed it to me, I froze. Written in thick black marker across the side were the words, don't drink this. Leave it. Confused, I looked at her and whispered, Maya, what is this? What's going on? Her face drained of color, and she leaned closer, speaking in the faintest voice. Just trust me. Not here. Leave it. Before I could respond, I heard a choking sound beside me. The man with the newspaper coughed violently, his body jerking before he collapsed onto the floor. His coffee cup tumbled from his hands, spilling across the tiles. The cafe filled with screams and chaos, but all I could think about were those words on my cup. The cafe erupted in panic. Chairs scraped against the floor as people rushed away from the man who had collapsed. Someone shouted for an ambulance, another person fumbled with their phone, and a young woman knelt beside him, pressing her hands against his chest, begging him to wake up. My hands trembled as I clutched my cup, the words written across it burning into my mind. Don't drink this. Leave it. I stood frozen for a moment, unable to process what had just happened. The man had been sitting right next to me, drinking his coffee, flipping through his newspaper as if it were any other day. Now he was lying on the floor, lifeless or close to it. My throat went dry. If I hadn't noticed the warning, if Maya hadn't written it, that could have been me. I turned toward the counter, searching for Maya. She stood stiff behind the espresso machine, her eyes locked on me. She gave a small shake of her head, as if telling me not to draw attention. My instinct was to walk over, to demand answers, but the fear in her eyes stopped me. I sank back into my chair, my heart pounding. An older woman near the register cried out, "What happened to him?" The barista working beside Maya stammered something about calling the police, but Maya herself stayed silent, her face pale. I knew she was hiding something. I looked down at my cup again, the warning standing out like a scar. The letters were uneven, written quickly, maybe even in a rush. My stomach twisted. If that coffee wasn't safe, who had tampered with it? Why me? I thought about my brother Daniel. His words from the night before echoed in my head. You're too trusting. You'd never notice if someone slipped something into your drink. A shiver ran through me. Was this exactly what he meant? Someone had slipped something into a drink, but it wasn't mine. At least, not yet. The man on the floor groaned weakly, his limbs twitching. The young woman beside him screamed for help again, her voice breaking. Paramedics couldn't arrive fast enough. I wanted to look away, but my eyes kept being drawn to him. It was like my body needed proof of what I already feared, that this wasn't random, that it wasn't a natural medical emergency. Something had been done to him. I forced myself to breathe and focus. I couldn't sit here waiting for something to happen to me, too. I needed to know the truth. Slowly, I slid my cup into my bag, hiding the warning from anyone who might see it. Then I walked back up to the counter, my legs shaky but determined. When Maya leaned forward to take another order, I whispered, "Tell me what's happening, right now." She didn't look at me at first. Her hands kept moving, steaming milk, pouring coffee, as if nothing were wrong. But her voice was sharp when she finally spoke, quiet enough only I could hear. "Put the cup away. Don't let anyone see it. You weren't supposed to be the one drinking that." Her words hit me like ice water. "What do you mean?" I whispered back. She finally met my eyes. Her lips tightened, and she said, "It was meant for you." The ground felt like it shifted under my feet. My voice caught in my throat. "What? Why?" I I don't know, she said, her hands still moving to hide the conversation. But the man who collapsed switched cups. He was sitting near you for a reason. I saw him slip something in when no one was looking. My chest tightened. I glanced back at him on the floor, his face pale, his body shaking slightly as another customer tried to keep him steady. He had switched cups. He had slipped something into mine. And then somehow he had taken it himself. My head spun with confusion. Had he done it on purpose? Or had he made a mistake? I wanted to press her for more, but the police sirens grew louder outside. Maya gave me one last look and whispered, "Stay quiet. Don't drink anything. Don't trust anyone." Then she turned away, her mask of calm slipping back into place. 2 officers entered the cafe moments later. They began asking questions, their presence quieting the chaos. I sat back down at my table, clutching my bag, trying to steady my breath. I felt every eye in the room like a spotlight. Was someone watching me? Was there another person waiting for me to slip up? I thought of calling Daniel, but my hands shook too badly to dial. Instead, I kept my phone in my lap, ready. The room felt smaller, tighter, as the officers spoke to the baristas, then the woman who had tried to help the man. Every second dragged like an hour. I had walked into the cafe that morning expecting nothing more than coffee and a quiet place to work. Now, I was sitting in the middle of something far darker. Someone had wanted me gone, and thanks to Maya's warning, I was still here. But for how long? The air in the cafe felt heavier, as the police started speaking to the customers one by one. My hands were still shaking when I sat back down, the cup with its warning hidden deep inside my bag. I could still feel the heat of it against me, as if the words written on it were alive. The older man lay on the floor, surrounded by people trying to help, while the sirens faded outside. I knew the moment was coming when the officers would ask me what I saw, but something in my gut told me to wait before saying anything. I needed to decide what to do next. Maya's words kept playing over and over in my head. It was meant for you. I wanted to believe there had been a mistake, that I had misunderstood, but deep down, I knew she wasn't lying. The way her eyes darted to the doors, the tightness in her voice. It was real fear. And if she was right, then someone had tried to poison me. I thought about calling my brother Daniel. He was a police officer, and if there was anyone who would know how to handle this, it would be him. But I imagined his voice on the phone, panicked and angry that I had gotten myself into something so dangerous. He would rush down here, demand answers, and I wasn't even sure I had them yet. What would I say? That a barista had saved my life by scribbling a warning on a cup? That the man who collapsed wasn't the intended victim, but I was? Without proof, it sounded unbelievable. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to leave. Not yet. If I left, I'd never know the truth. I needed to understand why this had happened, and I had to hear more from Maya. She was the only person who seemed to know what was going on. I walked back up to the counter, my heart pounding harder with every step. Maya was pretending to clean the milk steamer, her movements sharp and mechanical. I leaned in close and whispered, "I need you to tell me everything. Please, I can't just sit here." She froze for a second, then glanced at the officers on the far side of the cafe before answering under her breath, "You weren't supposed to drink that. Someone switched it before I handed it out. He asked for your name. I saw it happen." My pulse spiked. But why me? I don't know him. I don't know anyone who'd want to hurt me. Maya shook her head slightly, her jaw tight. "I don't know, but he wasn't working alone. I saw another man watching from the corner. He left right after the collapse. You can't trust that this is over." Her words sent a chill racing through me. There was another person, which meant I could still be in danger, sitting here, waiting for answers. For a moment, I thought about grabbing my bag and running out the door. But if I did, what then? I couldn't outrun whoever was behind this. I needed information. I needed to be ready. I returned to my seat and pulled out my phone. I typed a quick text to Daniel. "Something happened at the cafe. Don't call yet. Just trust me." I knew he wouldn't like it, but I needed a buffer before involving him. My eyes scanned the room, searching for anything out of place. Most people were focused on the man on the floor or answering police questions. But one detail caught me. The empty table in the back still had a half-finished drink and a jacket slung over the chair. Whoever had been sitting there had left in a hurry. I couldn't shake the thought that it had to be the second man Maya had mentioned. My throat tightened. He had been watching me. He had been close. And now he was gone. The officers finally made their way over. "Miss, were you sitting near him when this happened?" one asked, his notepad ready. I opened my mouth, then stopped. If I told them everything right now, about the cup, about Maya's warning, about the other man, they would pull her into it. And if what she said was true, she had already risked a lot by warning me. I didn't want to put her in more danger. So I lied. I told them I had been working on my laptop and hadn't seen much until the man collapsed. They nodded, scribbled in their pads, and moved on. The guilt burned in my chest, but I knew it was the only way to protect Maya until I had a better plan. I sat back, every nerve in my body on edge. I had made my decision. I wasn't leaving, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. I was going to get answers, even if it meant putting myself at risk. Maya's words about another man lingered in my mind, and I knew this wasn't over. The poisoned coffee had been meant for me, and whoever planned it might still be out there. That realization hit me with full force. This wasn't just a random incident in a cafe. I had been targeted, and unless I acted, they might try again. The cafe felt quieter as the police moved around, but the silence wasn't comforting. It was heavy, almost suffocating, as if everyone inside was holding their breath. I kept my bag close to me, the cup with its warning still hidden inside, and tried to steady the shaking in my hands. I knew that if I wanted to survive this, I couldn't just sit here waiting for answers. Maya's words haunted me. He wasn't alone. If that second man was still out there, it meant this wasn't finished. I scanned the cafe, my eyes darting to the windows. Rain tapped softly against the glass, blurring the view of the street outside. For a moment, nothing seemed unusual. Then I noticed a figure across the street, standing beneath the awning of a closed shop. He wasn't moving, wasn't even pretending to be on his phone. He was just watching. My heart thudded against my ribs. Was that him? The second man? I turned my head slightly so I wouldn't be obvious, but my pulse raced faster the more I thought about it. He wasn't a random bystander. He was waiting for something. Or someone. I wanted to tell the officers, but fear kept me still. What if they didn't believe me? What if pointing him out only put a target on my back? My brother's voice echoed in my mind again. You're too trusting, Lena. Pay attention to the people around you. For once, I wished he was here yelling at me to get out. Then it happened. The figure outside stepped away from the awning and crossed the street. My chest tightened. He pushed the cafe door open, the bell above jingling softly, and entered as if he belonged there. He was dressed in a dark jacket, water dripping from his hood, but his eyes locked on me the second he walked in. I froze. Every muscle in my body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. He didn't look at the police officers. He didn't glance at the man still on the floor being attended to by paramedics. His focus was only on me. Maya saw him too. I noticed her hand falter as she set down a cup. Her face paled, and she gave the slightest shake of her head. My stomach dropped. That was him. He walked slowly through the cafe, each step deliberate. When he passed a table, the customers shrank back instinctively, though they didn't know why. He stopped just a few feet from me, his voice low but sharp. That wasn't meant for him. It was meant for you. The words pierced me like knives. My throat went dry, and I couldn't force out a reply. One of the officers turned toward us, frowning. Sir, you need to step back. But the man ignored him, his gaze never leaving mine. You think you're safe because she warned you? His eyes flicked briefly toward Maya. That only bought you time. The officer stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm, but the man jerked away violently. His jacket shifted, and for the briefest moment, I caught a glimpse of something metallic tucked at his side. My breath caught. A knife. Ma'am, the officer said firmly to me. Step away. I couldn't move at first. My legs felt like stone. Then, as the man reached into his jacket, instinct kicked in. I shoved my chair back, the scrape loud enough to cut through the cafe's silence, and darted toward the counter where Maya stood. Chaos erupted. The officers shouted, one of them tackling the man as he pulled the blade free. Customers screamed and ducked under tables. Maya grabbed my arm and yanked me behind the counter, her hands trembling but strong. Stay down, she hissed. The struggle was short but brutal. The man fought with a strength that seemed fueled by rage, but the officers overpowered him, forcing the knife from his grip and slamming him onto the floor. His face twisted as he shouted, She was supposed to be gone! She was supposed to drink it! His words rang through the cafe, making my blood run cold. When the cuffs clicked around his wrists, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My whole body shook as the reality of what had just happened sank in. It was true. The poisoned coffee hadn't been random. It had been meant for me. And now everyone in the cafe knew it. The officers dragged him outside, his shouts echoing behind him as the door swung shut. The rain swallowed the sound, leaving only the stunned silence of shaken customers. Maya crouched beside me, her eyes wide with fear, but steady. I told you, she whispered. You weren't safe. I stared at her, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Why me? I asked, my voice cracking. Her expression softened with pity. I don't know, she admitted. But you listened. That's why you're still here. Her words struck deep. I thought of the man who had collapsed, of the way his body had crumpled so suddenly. That could have been me. It should have been me. And if not for 4 hastily written words on a coffee cup, it would have been. As the paramedics wheeled out the man who had collapsed, still unconscious, I finally allowed myself to cry. Not out of weakness, but out of sheer relief. Relief that I was alive, that Maya had spoken up, that the police had arrived in time. But beneath that relief was something darker, the knowledge that someone had wanted me gone, and I still didn't know why. When the cafe finally emptied, I sat at the corner table with my hands wrapped tightly around my bag. My legs still trembled from the rush of adrenaline, and I couldn't stop staring at the spot where the man had been tackled to the ground. Just hours before, I had come here expecting nothing more than a quiet morning coffee. Now, the cafe looked more like a crime scene than a place of comfort. The police had taken the attacker away, the paramedics had carried out the unconscious man who had collapsed, and all that remained were overturned chairs, spilled drinks, and the lingering shock in everyone's faces. Maya sat across from me, her hands folded, her face pale, but steady. For the first time since all this began, she wasn't behind the counter pretending everything was fine. She looked like someone who had been carrying a secret for too long. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't mean to drag you into something like this." I shook my head. "You didn't drag me into it. You saved me." My voice cracked, because the truth of it hit me all at once. If she hadn't written those words on my cup, if she had hesitated even for a second, I would have been the one on the floor, convulsing from poison. I owed her my life. The officers eventually came back over to me, notebooks in hand. Their questions felt endless. Did I know the man? Had I seen him before? Did I have enemies? Each question made me feel smaller, like they expected me to suddenly reveal some hidden part of my life that would explain everything. But I had nothing to give them. I didn't know him. I didn't know why he had targeted me. All I knew was what he had shouted as they dragged him away. She was supposed to drink it. The lack of answers was almost worse than the danger itself. If I didn't know why it had happened, how could I ever feel safe again? When they were done, they told me to go home and rest. But the word home didn't sound comforting anymore. How could I relax knowing someone had tried to kill me? How could I sit in my apartment, alone, with that question haunting me? My brother Daniel arrived not long after. The moment he walked in and saw me, he pulled me into his arms so tightly I could barely breathe. "You're okay," he said over and over. His uniform was damp from the rain, but I didn't care. I buried my face into his shoulder, letting the tears finally fall. When he pulled back, his jaw was tight, his eyes dark. "You're not going anywhere alone for a while," he said firmly. For once, I didn't argue. On the ride home, I stared out the car window, watching the rain blur the city lights. My thoughts kept circling back to the same image, the cup with those words scrawled across it, bold and rushed. "Don't drink this. Leave it." I couldn't shake the thought that survival had come down to whether or not I had listened. If I had ignored it, brushed it off as a silly joke, my family would be planning my funeral instead of driving me home. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's face. His eyes locked on me as he whispered, "It was meant for you." I saw Maya's pale expression as she urged me to stay quiet. I saw the older man collapsing to the ground, his cup slipping from his hands. The images replayed again and again, leaving me wide awake in a bed that suddenly felt too big, too unprotected. The next morning, when I finally dragged myself into the kitchen, I found myself staring at the coffee maker on my counter. The idea of pouring a cup, of even smelling the steam, made my stomach twist. Something so ordinary, so comforting, had turned into a symbol of danger. I realized in that moment that I might never look at coffee the same way again. Still, as shaken as I was, I also felt something else. Gratitude. Gratitude for Maya, who risked her job, and maybe even her safety to warn me. Gratitude for the police who arrived when they did. Gratitude that I had been given the chance to walk out of that cafe alive. But underneath it all was a lesson I knew I would never forget. Sometimes survival depends not on knowing all the answers, but on trusting the people brave enough to speak up when something feels wrong. I don't know why I was targeted that day. Maybe I'll never know. But I do know this. Life is fragile, and safety is never guaranteed, even in the most ordinary places. And I learned that when someone tells you to trust them in a moment of danger, sometimes you don't need an explanation. Sometimes you just need to act. Now, every time I pass by that cafe, I feel a chill run down my spine. I think of the man in the dark jacket, of the words on the cup, of the thin line that separated me from being a victim. And I remind myself, I was given a chance to keep living. Not everyone gets that. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from.